Hello, everyone. I believe everyone is doing great and awesome. Welcome once again back to my channel, the Dialogues, where we are learning in this series about policy and compliance management. Here in this video today, we will be learning about the control lifecycle flow. Now, in a control lifecycle flow, we have different states. But before we dive into this diagram and learn about control lifecycle flow with a use case, let's rewind back once again and check out how exactly a control is being created. So to do that, let me go back to the compliance workspace, and you already aware from my previous videos how I navigate into compliance workspace. Going to the workspaces here, then clicking on compliance workspace, and once I'm here, I have gone to the list view and went to all controls and selected one of such controls. Now, what is important in this control is the different detailed information of each and every field and how exactly every field is important we'll be learning. But before we do that, let me just duplicate this particular screen and I'll show you how this control is actually being created or generated automatically. So if you go back and rewind a few sessions in this series, you have learned there is something called as control objectives, which actually works like a template where you actually add the entity types. If you remember, we have learned about entity scoping as well. From entity scoping, we have scoped the entities which will be used or has to be taken into consideration, and then we had to create an entity type filter that basically filters out the required entities from a particular table where you can apply a particular control. Right now, control objective is nothing but a control actually which needs to be applied on specific entities. So let's consider uh, this particular control objective. What's important in this control objective to create a particular control are two things, especially for learning about a control is this. So if you go to this control objective, if you want the controls being generated automatically, you have to check this up, which says creates control automatically. You need to check this up. So once you have checked this checkbox, then the controls gets created automatically. How? It is by adding a entity type here. You can either create a new entity type or add an existing one by clicking on add button. Once you have clicked on add button, you will be given with selections or available entity types which you can select from this. So let's say let me select this SOX process and add it. As soon as I add the control, uh, sorry, entity type, you see there are two pop-ups already coming up here. One is the standard control for the entities under this entity type will be created if create control automatically is selected. That's what I said. So if you want to see this control generation having been initiated automatically, you need to check that box. So once that is done, then there is a schedule job which runs, which called as item generation has been initiated. So basically, it is kicking off the generation of control based on the entity type. Well, now let me just get rid of these two buttons, info boxes, and let me reload this. You see, control is 79 because I already had one entity type already added to this control objective. Now I have two entity types which I have added. The latest one which I added was SOX processes. Earlier, you have seen that control count was 79, now it is 99, right? Now, if I go back to this control, I'll see or check for the ones which I've added. So let me just get rid of these particular controls which got created and look for the ones which I have added lately. Okay, so to do that, let me just add one column which is created. Okay, and let me just sort it out. Created. All right. Okay, I have sorted. Now, these are the ones which got created now after I have added entity type. Okay. Now, if you see, this is one of such control which I've just opened, and it shows me under overview what is the description of this control, which is nothing but it actually inherited from the control objective description. And I could see the different states. One is draft, attest, review, monitor, and finally retired. Then status. Then for tracking, we can see if there are any issues. Then classic attestations, we learn about it in this particular state, which is called as attest. And finally, the control tests. And if you have already taken up the attestations, you will be able to see those over here. Okay. Now, I'll just go back to this diagram where we'll learn about these, okay, using a use case. Now, for me, for today's video, the use case is the control description is ensure that all employees' licenses are up to date. This is the control we have to apply on our entity. Entities who? Here, the employees are the entities, right? The entities could be people, processes, objects, where you want to measure the compliance. The first very state is called as draft. Then we have attest, review, monitor, and finally retire. Any control which gets created will be in the draft state. If I go back to my example, if you see, the state is draft, right? It got created just now. If you go to details, you will also see the state here as draft. What is important here is if you see weighting, okay, that means what is the weight of this particular control to measure the compliance score, which we'll be learning in the next upcoming videos. Frequency is the one which decides how often you want to trigger this particular control, which is event driven, daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, semi annually, or annually. Now, assignment is if you want to add a owning group or a particular owner, you can select it. Sync with entity owner is that means the entity which has been added with this control, it will automatically fetch who is the actual respondent of the attestation. Okay, if you uncheck this, then this owner field gets open where you can select the name of the person who will be actually taking up the attestation. Okay, now before we get into this, if you see this particular example itself, we have attestation respondent as nobody and the owner field was not available, right? Because of one reason. That means the entity which has been added, which is this particular entity, I don't think there is a owner. So if I go to details of this entity, if you see there is no owner, come on, let me add one owner for this. And my favorite person is able tutor. and let me save this record. All right, it has thrown up an error where I have to select a class. Okay, then let me save it. Cool, I think it got saved. Let me go back to my control. Okay, and let me see if it has added. Yes, it did. It did. If you see, the owner has been added as able tutor because I had synced with the entity owner. Alright, I think we are good to go ahead with the flow. Now, as you have learned, any control which gets created, it will be in the draft state. Second is attest. What is attest basically? This is where uh, the entity owner or the control owner or whoever has been mentioned as attestation responded will be sent out with a survey, right? So basically, attestations are surveys that gather evidence to prove that a particular control, or in this case, ensure that all employees' licenses are up to date. This particular control has been implemented, and you provide in evidence. So basically, there will be a survey which will be sent out, and you need to provide in evidence. Okay, and how is this being done? We will see that now. For that, let me go back to my control and I will be using the same control. Okay, and there is a little button which says attest. I'll click on attest. Now you see attestations or attestation is created. So what will happen is, see, if you see classic attestations, there is a attestation survey which has been sent to able tutor and it's in the state is ready to take. However, the control itself is in the state of attest. So you can see the states where exactly a control is at currently in two different places. One is here under details, state as attest. Also, you can find it here on the top. All right. Now, let, let me show you how exactly this attestation looks like. So right now, I will not have access to this because it should be taken by able tutor. Okay, so for that what I'll do is I'll just go back to one of the instance and I'll impersonate as able tutor. Okay, remember the name of the control, which is deploy a network intrusion detection solution. Okay, okay, I'm already here and I'll go to compliance workspace. I'll go to the task. I'll see if I have anything assigned to me. Under this, you'll see classic control attestation. And if you see, this is my control, which is deploy a network intrusion detection solution. If I open this, I will have an option called as take assessment. I will take up that assessment. So there are basically out of the box, there are only two questions. One is the control implemented? If it is yes, then attach the evidence. Okay. If you have not implemented the control as a control owner, then say it as no. Then you should explain and there will be no evidence will be asked. If I select not applicable, then also it will be asking you for an explanation. So let's consider this as yes and let me attach an evidence. So once I have added the evidence, I'll just close this. I'll explain the control has been implemented. Okay, and I shall submit this. Hooray! So you have completed this attestation. Okay, let me end this impersonification and I will log in back as a control administrator. Okay, now if I am back to the same control, I'll just reload this page to show you what exactly is there right now. So you will see that the classic attestation has been taken and the state has been changed automatically to review. You will also find the similar state under details as well. But as a control admin, I can also see what exactly has been provided as an evidence too. Okay, now you will see these are the different information which has been provided. If I click on view users response, you will see what is the answers been given as part of the questions being asked, what is the evidence the control owner or entity owner has attached to prove that the control has been implemented. Once you are good, you can close this. You're happy with it after your review. You will go back here and finally we will be able to click on monitor state. Okay, if I click on monitor state, that means we have met the compliance and this control is compliant. Okay, if you see the status has changed to compliant, and if you see under details you will see the status as compliant. Okay, and all of these fields has now become read only. If you go to overview, you will see the stages or state here. It says monitor. The status was empty before, the overall compliance is now compliant. Okay, and this is the attestation been taken by able tutor. All right, now let me go back once again and I'll tell you about the different personas who are being involved. Now, finally, before I jump in there, let me explain about the retirement part. So let's consider your organization has decided to retire a particular control. That means it is no longer required. So in that case, you can go back and retire a particular control. Okay, you click on these three little buttons or dots, you'll see retire and delete. So you can click on retire and this will get retired, this particular control. I have just clicked on the retire button and you see the state has been changed to retire and this control will not be kicked in post the frequency which has been mentioned. So right now here in this very control, we have not mentioned the frequency. However, you can mention it annually, semi-annually, all of that. So what it basically does is, based on that frequency, this particular control will again go back to draft state and this whole process will start again. Okay. All right. So let me go back again to this diagram. Now let's consider there is a control. All right. Now this control is ensure that all employees licenses are up to date. Okay. And this is a particular control which is for this particular policy, which says every employee needs to renew their licenses annually. Now to meet this policy, you need to apply this control. Okay. Now responsible for enforcing the control is in their department is the owners of that particular control. Okay, so this control owner will have to adhere to this policy by implementing this control for their respective employees. Now attestation is a declaration by the owner that they have a method to enforce the control. This is the next important factor here is indicator. That means I'll talk about the indicator part as well, like what exactly happens for or in terms of indicators. Okay, now indicators are basically runs, or they run basically because or based on the frequency which you have set up in that very control, the field which I've shown, right? Now, based on this, the owners deploy their method to enforce the control. Now, control test is the final process where, let's say, it is been the frequency has been set annually. So, an auditor confirms that the enforcement of control has been actually taken care of. So, basically, here what's happening is there is a policy, and to adhere to that policy, you apply a control. To prove that the control has been implemented, you take up an attestation and provide the evidence. Now, whatever is been done, it needs to be checked by the auditor. So the auditor comes annually and checks for all of this compliance has been taken care of or not. Okay. Now, let me just talk you through about indicator. Now, if you see, there is no indicator here. Okay. Indicators are basically, let me just show you how exactly you can actually add the indicators. For that, I have to go back to the control objective. Now, let me select this one. Okay, this control objective. How we have a control objective uh, working for a control, basically a template. Likewise, we have something called as indicator as well. So if you go here, you will see indicator templates. So if you click on indicator templates, you can actually add or create a new one. Let me see if I have one indicator available. Yes, I do have. Manual power backup. Let me add this indicator template. So basically, let me just talk you through what exactly this does. How do we manage control indicators? So continuous monitoring involves activities related to identifying and creating key risk and control indicators. The compliance overview is available to the compliance administrators and compliance managers, providing an executive view into compliance requirements, overall compliance, and compliance breakdowns. Now, this indicator template will allow the creation of multiple indicators for the similar control and risk. Okay, so if you see indicators, once I have added this indicator template, indicators are being updated for all the controls. Okay, so if I go back here and check out this particular control, let me reload this page. I'll see one control here. This is a different set of control, not the one which we have used for the previous demo. Let me just click on this control to get me or fetch me this control. If you see now, the indicator has been added, that is manual power backup. Okay, and the indicators, okay, there's one more important thing. Now, indicators can be of different types. Okay, now this is a control indicator. Okay, now category, it could be a risk indicator as well. All right, now if I go back here, you will see this could be a manual or automated. So to check out this, I can go back here to the control objective and go to the indicator template. I'll click on this indicator template, and if you see, the type could be basic, scripted, or manual. Okay, now what exactly this indicator will do is indicators will collect the data to monitor the control and risk and collect audit evidence. Indicators also monitor a single control or a risk. Okay, so it basically depends on various factors here. Now, to get to know about each and every bit of information, uh, we will have to know about indicator task, indicators, and indicator results as well. Okay, so now after you have created this control indicator, okay, you will have a few other detailed information as well. So if I go to this particular indicator, so for that, let me go back to this control and try to learn about this particular indicator itself. Okay, now this category is very important. Okay, now uh, because it could be a risk indicator or a control indicator. The name of the indicator is also important and applies to is also one of the things which is also very important, because based on that only you will be able to find out if this is uh, for a particular entity or for what particular thing. So this is for this entity called as Acme Consumer Durable, and this is the control. The name of the control is already here. The owner of this control is Fertility, and then the type is manual. Okay, now one more thing which is important is the schedule part. Okay, that means collection frequency. Okay, now collection frequency for indicator results, indicator tasks and results are generated automatically based on the indicator schedule. Okay, now next run time is also very important, because this is the next collection time for indicator results. We define it here. So once all of these things are done, now this method is also important. As I told, this could be a manual indicator or a basic or scripted. Now, short description is the name of this particular control, which is here, over here, where we have named the template name. Also, one of the thing is important is functional domain, but I have not seen many of the companies are using this. But yes, if you want to categorize or flag it, you can use functional domain. Now functional domain, if I go back and check, it could be privacy, IT risk and compliance. These are out of the box ones, but yes, this is something which is also gets important for large organizations. Okay, now, indicator results are being listed here. What was the previous status and what is the current status? This will be only be shown once you have executed this indicator from here. Okay. Basically, this indicator will run based on the frequency which you have mentioned in the control.